At the end of a year, Popgun does an awards show for the Popcast. And this year he talked about some predictions he made for 2025.
The community is dying conversation is something that we've talked about multiple times. So I made the prediction that in December of 2025, we were once again going to have the same conversations. People were going to make the same videos yet again, talking about how the community is dying. That didn't happen. Nobody is talking about the community dying because it's not. It's arguably in the best place it's been in years, aside from the fact that, when Splatoon 3 first came out, obviously there was a ton of people playing. But for this stage of Splatoon 3, we're doing pretty decent.
I like the reminder that sometimes the negative things we make a fuss about and feed our negative emotions with end up really not being as big a deal when we take a step back and put it in perspective. A corollary to that idea is that sometimes something incredibly positive and worth celebrating doesn't get any fuss made about it at all. That's a pretty common problem in our media landscape right now, but we're not here to talk about society. Gross. We're here to talk about a Nintendo Switch video game marketed to Japanese 10-year-olds where you can play as a squid. Back in my day, when Splatoon 2 was still being patched and you could count to 10 without being interrupted, we complained about the devs having shooter bias. I considered staying in Old Man Gem voice for this entire following history lesson on the meta, but I decided not to keep it from being 4 times as long. You're welcome. The Splattershot is the most iconic Splatoon weapon. It was the first Splatoon weapon we ever saw in the E3 teaser trailer in 2014, and they really don't spend much time on the roller or the charger in that trailer, even though they seem playable in that demo build of the game. The first 2 weapons ever featured in a Splatoon amiibo were both Splattershots. It is the main character Splatoon weapon. And in part, I mean that literally because the protagonist of the Splatoon manga uses the Splattershot. It is the Mario of this video game franchise. Alongside, or maybe because of this fact, the Splattershot, and especially short-range shooters in general, have always been strong options in competitive play. Uncle Dude was out there Zuka sniping people on the Wasabi Splattershot before my inkling was born. When people ask what weapon I main, I tell them I'm a Splatoon 2 Tentatek Splattershot main. Though a lot of my experience was also on the Kensa Splattershot, which was a tremendously dominant force in endgame Splatoon 2. Another short-range shooter, the Kensa 52 Gal, was one of the strongest Splatoon weapons ever put in the series. The vanilla Splattershot in Splatoon 3 was always one of the best weapons for exploiting Trizuka whenever that special's been strong, and I probably don't need to discuss how dominant its little brother the Splash-O-Matic has been in this game's history. The NZAP 85 has been an ever-present meta option in Splatoon 2, and ever since Tacticooler entered the meta in Splatoon 3. That's not even mentioning half of the shooter weapons that have seen a lot of top-level use in competitive play. On top of the strong history of specific kits, it's also worth noting that shooters have historically taken up a disproportionate amount of a competitive team comp. For the longest time, shooter players were in high demand because you could basically always slot in a shooter player no matter what else the team was trying to run. There were times where you could run an entire comp consisting of 4 shooter weapons that would work at top level, something that has never been true about any other class, except maybe that one time Tri-Slosher was broken in Splatoon 2 and you just ran 4 of them. It supported weapons with low paint output, allowing a teammate to run something less orthodox or at least more specialized. It came in a wide variety of ranges. It could be a source of frontline aggression, or a way to fit in a particular special the team wanted, since the short-range shooters got a lot of love on the kit side from the devs. Look at this chart of the special weapons on Splatoon 2 kits. Aside from a couple specific types of bomb rush, you could play a shooter, maybe even multiple shooters, that had whatever special you wanted. There were just that many kits. Blasters never got Booyah Bomb. Brushes never got Stingray, or Bubble Blower, or Booyah Bomb, or any of the different bomb rushes. There was a shooter kit to solve just about every problem, but not necessarily a kit of a different weapon class. On top of all this, patch 4.2.0 of Splatoon 2 buffed all the shooter weapons so that their recovery animation after firing shots was shorter. making it so that what was already the most maneuverable weapon class in the game, the one that locked you into an animation for the shortest amount of time when you chose to deal damage to the opponent, was now several frames faster. We've been seeing the ripple effects of that patch for most of the next 7 years. Yes, even into Splatoon 3. For reasons that I would hope are clear at this point, it has long been a complaint with the competitive balance of the game that the devs have, quote, shooter bias. As absurd as it is that this bias persisted for so long, I do think I can confidently say that recent patches of Splatoon 3 have addressed it more substantially than they have been in the time that I've been playing the game competitively. That's not to say that shooter weapons have gone away in competitive play. This graphic comes from Area Cup, the elite-level prestigious Japanese tournament that everyone looks to as an indicator of where the metagame is at the highest level of play. You can see that teams are still quite interested in running shooter-class weapons here. Here's a tier list from last patch, made by Chara and Kyo with some input from Gray. A decent survey of top players from the Western Splatoon scene. There are still a couple shooters up near the top. What's changed, though, is that these weapons are more and more being seen as support weapons, not as part of an aggressive frontline. They can't do everything anymore. They're not jacks of all trades, masters of all. We've gone from a game where it made sense to run 3 Splash-O-Matics in a single top-level team comp, to a game where there are more top-tier Splatanas than there are shooters. Even with Tacticooler in the game, a zombie mode rushdown special, trying to use short-range shooters to rush the enemy team down often just leads to them getting kited and stopped in their tracks by a longer-range Splatana or Blaster or Slosher. These meta fighting weapons not only have longer range, but also have larger hitboxes that can often hit around cover and get all sorts of damage combos when played on a coordinated team. It took some time to get the kits we needed for these weapons to fit into team comps and have their weaknesses covered for them, but right now I would argue that shooters are not the strongest weapon class in the game, and haven't been for some time. Coming back from my hiatus, what struck me the most in adapting to the new metagame is that I really just can't play my splatter shot as aggressively as I have in the past. If I try to dive someone, I'm just gonna get picked from 3x my weapon range by a Stamper player. Those Splatoon 2 Tentatech Splattershot genes have been bred out of my weapon class, and I'm really going to have to double down on playing to paint teammates' feet and get high special output to have the same impact. I don't have playmaking ability in a lot of situations, and have to kind of hold a stronger weapon's hand to get things done. One exciting new asterisk to this discussion is the Glamour's Splattershot. It's one of the last true aggressive frontline shooters the game has, because it has what FLC has called a continuation special. Anytime you have Kraken available, you can get yourself into a situation you'd otherwise get traded for, dive in, full commitment to get a pick, and then duck into a phone booth really quick to reveal your superhero outfit and cruise out of there unharmed, displacing the enemy team and maybe even getting a pick or two on the way. Kraken is hardly the strongest special in the game, and committing a weapon's entire special output to allow selfish frontline splattershot plays isn't landing it at the top of tier lists anytime soon. On paper, the 52 gal is probably a better choice for fighting, and that's a weapon that itself hasn't been seeing the most success fighting these meta Splatanas and Blasters. Still, I do feel the Glamours might be the closest weapon kit to the way I'm best at playing the game right now. I'm going to be furiously learning Kraken for the next few weeks with the help of Nikki's absolutely fantastic guide to the special, which everyone should watch, and while you're at it, go sub to the channel and tell them to make more things, because they make things good. I'm also going to feel right at home on the FroPro, which is definitely the correct abbreviation for that weapon, and I'm going to be marking any uses of Prozen I ever hear with red pen. This the English teacher doth decree. I played a lot of Kensa's Splattershot Pro during its time in the sun in Splatoon 2, when main power-up made it 2-shot from time to time. And this weapon is extremely similar. Strong special, Splat Bomb with Splattershot Pro, and while the 2-shot potential that it had with the main power-up gear perk isn't there anymore, it happens to have damage combos with basically everything else people are using in the game right now, so it's really common only to need to hit 1 or 2 shots anyway. On top of that, I get to use the skills I developed playing the Kensa splatter shot of using missiles to set up fights for the next 5 seconds. You feed your team the information about enemy locations and call a fight on opponents who are both located and forced to respond to the missiles instead of fighting back. That should be a pretty strong kit to adjust to, and on paper, it's probably the weapon that's best suited to me in the current meta. All of these ideas for what I should be playing are relatively untested, and maybe after a few scrims, I learn that I'm still going to do the best on V-Shot for the time being. Maybe there's an entirely different weapon or class that's working, and I'll shift my focus to that for the patch. But the main point, what I thought was worth noting, is that the game's changes have culminated in a very slow, long overdue fix to a balance issue that has been plaguing it for a very long time. And that's to be celebrated even if it comes with some growing pains. Even if only within the shooter class, I've always had to make some adjustments to my weapon pool from time to time, and they've always felt jarring at first. Even so, by the time those disruptive patches were over, I've always come out of it with some new skill, some new point of reference that's helped me in future metagames after that, so I've never been particularly upset. This patch is already teaching me mountains more than I ever knew about Kraken, and it's forcing me to be more disciplined in my aggression, something that's always been a weakness of mine. I've returned to the game when it's at a great place, with a fast-paced, aggressive metagame that allows for tons of weapon variety, a strong kit in just about every weapon class. Just because it's not the same game I'm used to, doesn't mean I've been dealt a weak hand. It just means there's more for me to learn. And because I'm enjoying myself enough to learn it, in the end, that's only going to make me a better player.